with the frenzy of an old snake shedding its skin, the speckled road scored with ruts, smelling of mold, twisted on itself and re-entered the forest where the dasheen leaves thicken and folk stories begin. Sunset would threaten us as we climbed higher to her house up the asphalt hill road, whose yam vines wrangled over gutters with the dark reek of moss, the shutters closing like eyelids of that mimosa called Time Marie. Then, lucent as paper lanterns, lamplight glowed through the ribs, house after house. There was her own lamp at the black twist of the path. There's childhood, and there's childhood's aftermath. She began to remember at the minute of the fireflies, to the sound of the pipe water banging in kerosene tins, stories she told my brother and myself. Her leaves were the libraries of the Caribbean. The luck was ours, those fragrant origins! Her head was magnificent, Sidon. In the gully of her voice shadows stood up and walked. Her voice travels my shelves. She was the lamplight in the stare of two mesmerized boys, still joined in one shadow, invisible twins.
The poem, the author writes, with the frenzy of an old snake shedding its skin, the speckled road scored with ruts smelling of mold. And from the beginning, he writes in a past tense, which indicates memory or flashback. And in line 2, he uses sensory details such as speckled road, scored with ruts, and smelling of mold to indicate something dirty or something that the speaker isn't fond of. And line 3 is twisted on itself and re-entered the forest. And re-entering of the forest indicates returning to a dark past. Forests usually are very dark and easy to get lost in, which can resemble the speaker's childhood. Line 4, where the dasheen leaves thicken and folk stories begin. This is one of the first plant-themed words he uses, dasheen leaves. Sunset would threaten us as we climb closer, and the word threaten indicates a dark tone. As we climbed closer to her house up the asphalt hill road, whose yam vines, which is another plant, wrangled over gutters with the dark reek of moss. Wrangled has the same effect as threaten. It creates the dark tone. And the dark reek of moss is also part of the plant theme and relates back to the smelling of mold, indicating something he's not fond of about his past. The shutters closing like the eyelids of that mimosa, which is a tropical plant, which relates back to the plant theme, called Time Marie. Then lucent as paper lanterns, which is the first time the speaker contradicts the dark theme, the dark tone previously used in the lines before it. Paper lanterns, lamplight glowed through the ribs, house after house, indicating, when he says house after house, that everyone was kind of the same. There was her own lamp, indicating that he viewed her as different from everyone else. There was her own lamp at the black twist of the path, and she was kind of a light in the darkness for him. There's childhood, and there's childhood's aftermath, which relates back to the first line, contrasting childhood and adulthood and looking back at his past. She began to remember at the minute of the fireflies, which fireflies indicates light compared to darkness, to the sound of pipe water banging in the kerosene tins, stories she told to my brother and myself. Her leaves were the libraries of the Caribbean. Her leaves indicating that she's a plant, comparing her to the theme of plants in the previous lines, were the libraries of the Caribbean. By comparing her to a library, he is showing how much knowledge the boys believed that the woman had and how they believed the stories she told them. The luck that was ours, though fragrant origins, and line 17 ends with an exclamation point, which indicates a shift from a dark tone to a light tone, and he begins to say nothing but nice things about the woman that told them stories. He says, "Her head was magnificent. In the gully of her voice, shadows stood up and walked. Her voice travels my shelves." He says her stories made shadows stand up and walk, indicating that one, the light versus dark with shadows, and stood up and walked. Her stories were so impactful on him and everyone else. Her voice travels my shelves. This is the first time that he switches from past tense, indicating that her stories are still impacting his life today. And he switches back to past. She was the lamplight in the stare of two mesmerized boys, still joined in one shadow. This shows how the stories she was telling them really brought them together, and he compares them one shadow instead of two. And the plant theme overall shows growth in not only the boys but the woman as well, because now she's much older and shedding her skin, and the boys have grown because of her stories and how they impacted their lives.